The massive silver spaceship landed on the purple soil of planet Sonora. John Miller stepped out, his black diplomatic suit neat and pressed. At 6 feet tall, he was considered tall on Earth. But here, he felt small. 2 alien guards waited for him. Their blue skin shimmered in the orange sunlight. "Follow us, human ambassador," they said in broken English. John nodded and walked behind them, trying not to stare at their long tails. The alien palace rose before them like a mountain of crystal. Its towers reached so high they disappeared into the clouds. John's heart beat faster. He was the first human to ever enter this place. "Wait here," one guard said. They entered a room bigger than any John had seen before. The ceiling was so high, he had to bend his neck all the way back to see it. Then he heard footsteps, heavy footsteps that made the floor shake. Queen Zura entered the room. John's mouth fell open. She was even taller than the reports said, a full 8 feet of muscled alien power. Her skin was deep blue with patterns that glowed like stars. A crown of living crystal floated above her head. But it was her eyes that caught John's attention. They were pure silver, like mirrors. She looked down at him and laughed. The sound echoed through the huge room. "So this is what humans send to make peace. Such a tiny thing." Her voice was deep and strong. John kept his face calm, even though his hands were shaking. "Size isn't everything, Your Majesty. Humans have much to offer." "Oh." Queen Zora walked around him in a circle, like a cat playing with its food. "And what could your kind offer mine? We have technology you can't even dream of. Our smallest children are stronger than your strongest warriors. We offer friendship," John said, "and new ways of thinking. Different points of view." The queen stopped in front of him. "Different points of view." She smiled, showing teeth that gleamed like pearls. "Perhaps you're right. Let's test this idea." She clapped her hands. Servants rushed in with chairs and tables. "Sit," she commanded. "Show me these new ways of thinking." John sat across from her. A servant brought papers, the peace treaty Earth had prepared. But before John could start talking about it, Queen Zara leaned forward. "I have a better idea," she said. Her silver eyes sparkled with something that might have been humor, or might have been cruelty. "Your people want lasting peace. Then perhaps we should consider a more traditional arrangement." John's throat felt dry. "What kind of arrangement?" "Marriage," Queen Zara said, and laughed again. "Isn't that how your primitive cultures seal important deals? A royal marriage between our peoples." She was clearly joking, mocking human customs. But then something unexpected happened. As she reached for the treaty papers, her hand brushed against John's. The queen froze. Her silver eyes went wide. John felt it too, like a spark of electricity, but warm, pleasant. Their eyes met, and for a moment, neither of them moved. Queen Zora pulled her hand back fast, like she'd been burned. "Enough for today," she said quickly. Her voice sounded different, less sure. "We will continue tomorrow." She stood up so fast her chair fell over. Without another word, she walked out of the room. The guards followed, leaving John alone. Later that night, in her private chambers, Queen Zara paced back and forth. Her advisor, an old alien named Kex, watched with worry. "My queen, you seem troubled," Kex said. Queen Zara stopped pacing. She looked at her hand, the one that had touched the human. "Something is wrong, Kex. When I touched him, I felt something. Something I've never felt before. Perhaps you are ill." "No." Queen Zara shook her head. "This is different. I can't stop thinking about him. About his eyes. His voice." She growled in frustration. "He's human. Weak, small, primitive. So why can't I get him out of my head?" Kex's eyes widened with understanding. But he said nothing as his queen resumed her pacing, her crystal crown glowing with her confused emotions. Outside her window, 3 moons shone down on the alien world, and in his guest room far below, John Miller looked up at those same moons, touching his own hand where the spark had happened, wondering what tomorrow would bring. 3 days after their first meeting, Queen Zora couldn't focus on her morning duties. Every time she tried to read reports, she remembered how the human's hand felt against hers. It made her angry. "Your Majesty," a guard burst into the throne room. "There's an emergency in the crystal mines." Finally, some real problems to solve. "What kind of emergency?" she asked, standing up. "The deep tunnels are collapsing, and the human ambassador is already there." "What?" Queen Zora's crystal crown flashed red with anger. "Who gave him permission to?" "He heard about the problem and went to help," the guard explained quickly. "He said Earth has similar mines." Queen Zora rushed to the mines, her long legs carrying her faster than most vehicles. When she arrived, she found chaos. Miners were running from the tunnels as crystal dust filled the air. The ground shook beneath her feet, and there was John Miller, covered in purple crystal dust, drawing something on a piece of paper while talking to the mine supervisor. "What do you think you're doing?" Queen Zora demanded. John looked up, his face serious. "Your mines are built like our old diamond mines on Earth. I know what's wrong." He showed her his drawing. "See these support beams? They're placed wrong. The crystal formation is pushing them apart." Another shake made everyone stumble. A loud crack came from deep underground. "We have 10 minutes before the main tunnel collapses," John said. "But I know how to stop it." Queen Zora wanted to throw him out. How dare this human tell their people how to mine crystals? But she saw the fear in her miner's eyes. "What do you need?" John's plan was strange but clever. They used the mining lasers to cut new tunnels that took pressure off the main shaft. The work was dangerous. John almost got crushed twice, but each time Queen Zora pulled him to safety with her superior strength. When it was over, the mines were safe. The miners cheered for John, which made Queen Zora's skin change color with annoyance. "Lucky guess," she told him later in the palace. "Not luck. Science," John replied. "Your people are amazing at space travel and energy crystals. But Earth has been digging mines for thousands of years. Different knowledge, different strengths." Queen Zora felt that strange feeling again, like electricity in her chest. She found herself staring at his face, noticing how his eyes crinkled when he smiled. "You're bleeding," she said suddenly, seeing a cut on his arm from the mine. "It's nothing." But Queen Zora was already calling for medical supplies. When the servant brought them, she insisted on bandaging his arm herself. She told herself it was because human biology was delicate and her doctors might make a mistake. Her fingers trembled as she wrapped the bandage. John's skin was warm, softer than her people's tough hide. When she finished, she realized they were sitting very close. "Thank you," John said softly. Queen Zora stood up so fast she knocked over a crystal vase. It should have shattered, but John caught it with surprising speed. "Interesting reflexes for a weak human," she said. "Interesting gentleness from a warrior queen," he answered. That night, Queen Zora felt sick. Her skin kept changing colors without her control. Her heart beat too fast. The palace doctor could find nothing wrong. "Perhaps," old Kex suggested carefully, "it is not an illness of the body, but of the heart." "Impossible." Queen Zora threw a crystal paperweight at him. Kex ducked, used to his queen's temper. "He is human. Even thinking about such things is what, my queen?" But Queen Zora didn't answer. She was remembering how John's skin felt under her fingers, how brave he'd been in the mines, how his quick thinking had saved her people. In his room, John added notes to his diary. Day 4 on Sonora. Almost died in a mine today. The queen keeps looking at me like she's trying to solve a puzzle, or like she wants to throw me out an airlock. Sometimes both at once. But when she bandaged my arm, her hands were so gentle. I've never felt anything like it. He stopped writing and touched the bandage. Somewhere above him, a queen was pacing her chambers, both of them wondering about things that should have been impossible. Neither of them noticed the strange glow that had started to shimmer in the air whenever they were close to each other. Queen Zora woke up floating 3 feet above her bed. The strange glow around her body pulsed with a rhythm that matched her heartbeat. She crashed back down, breaking the royal bed frame. "Impossible," she whispered, staring at her hands. The glow faded, but she could still feel something different inside her, something that felt both alien and familiar. Her morning meeting with the Royal Council didn't go any better. While discussing trade agreements, Queen Zora's skin kept shifting between colors that had never been seen on her species before. Pink, tan, colors that looked almost human. "My queen, are you well?" one council member asked. Before she could answer, all the crystal lights in the room exploded. Shards rained down, but they froze in midair around the queen, spinning like stars before dropping harmlessly to the floor. "Meeting dismissed," she ordered, running from the room. The royal doctors were useless. Their scanners showed impossible readings, energy patterns that didn't make sense, and in the middle of her body, a small sphere of light that shouldn't have been there. "My queen," the head doctor said nervously, "you appear to be generating human DNA. And something else. Something new." "What are you saying?" But Queen Zora already knew. She had felt it growing inside her. Impossible life. A combination that had never existed before. She was pregnant. With a human's child. With John's child. The news hit her like a plasma blast. She destroyed half the medical bay in her panic, her new powers flaring out of control. Equipment floated. Lights flickered. The crystal walls hummed with energy. "No one can know," she ordered the doctors. No one. But secrets were hard to keep in the Crystal Palace, especially when the queen started craving strange Earth foods, when she was caught crying over Earth romance movies, when her powers kept growing stronger. John noticed something too. The strange glow appeared whenever they were in meetings together. Objects would float. Crystals would sing with strange music. And sometimes, when their eyes met, they could hear each other's thoughts. One night, he found her in the palace gardens, practicing with her new powers. She was dancing with balls of light, her skin shifting through rainbow colors, her silver eyes glowing like stars. "It's beautiful," he said. Queen Zora spun around. The lights scattered like fireworks. "How long have you been watching?" "Long enough to know something's changed." He stepped closer. "I feel it too. The connection. The power. What's happening to us?" Before she could answer, a sharp pain made her double over. The baby, their baby, kicked for the first time. The garden exploded with light. Every crystal in the palace began to chime. John caught her before she fell. The moment they touched, they both saw visions. A child with blue-tinted skin and human eyes, floating among stars. A new species that could bridge 2 worlds. Power beyond anything either race had known. "I'm pregnant," Queen Zora whispered. "With your child. A hybrid. The doctors say it's impossible. But we've been doing impossible things since we met," John finished. Suddenly, alarms blared through the palace. The Royal Council had finally discovered the truth. Guards were coming. "If they find out," Queen Zora said, her voice shaking, "they'll try to remove me from power. Maybe worse. A queen carrying the human child. They'll say I'm contaminated. Unfit to rule." John looked at the approaching guards, then at Zora. Without hesitation, he took her hand. "Then we'll face them together." The baby kicked again. Crystal spires grew from the garden ground, surrounding them in a protective shell. Their combined power made the air shimmer with possibilities. Inside her chambers, old Kex smiled as he watched through a window. He'd seen this coming from their first meeting. Sometimes the greatest power came from the most unlikely combinations. The Queen of Sonora and the human ambassador stood together, their joined hands glowing with the light of new life, ready to face whatever came next. Above them, The three moons of Sonora aligned for the first time in 1,000 years, as if the universe itself was blessing this impossible union. The news spread through the Crystal Palace like wildfire. The Royal Council called an emergency meeting at midnight. As Queen Zara entered the council chamber, the crystal walls turned black, a sign of deepest shame. This is an outrage. Council leader Vex slammed his fist on the table. A queen carrying a human child. The bloodline has been pure for 10,000 years. But before he could continue, something strange happened. The baby's power surged, and suddenly everyone in the room could hear each other's thoughts. Council members stumbled back, overwhelmed by the sudden connection. Through this accidental telepathy, they saw the truth. The queen's love for her people, John's dedication to peace, and inside Zara, a child whose power could change everything. The connection broke. Council members fell into their seats, gasping. What? What was that? Vex whispered. That was your future queen or king, Zara said, standing tall. A child of two worlds, with powers neither of us fully understand. But not everyone was convinced. A group of traditionalists, led by General Krell, stormed into the chamber. The queen is corrupted, Krell shouted. The human has poisoned her mind. Suddenly, the air turned thick and heavy. The baby's power was growing stronger. Crystal formations burst from the floor, forming patterns no one had seen before, a perfect blend of human DNA spirals and Sonoran crystal structures. John entered the chamber, despite the guards trying to stop him. The moment he and Zara were close, their combined energy made the entire palace hum. Their child's power connected with the living crystal of the palace itself. Through the crystal walls, they could see the city below. Thousands of Sonorans had gathered, drawn by the strange lights and energy. But instead of angry protests, they watched in wonder as the crystal spires of the city began to glow with new colors, pulsing in rhythm with the baby's heartbeat. Look, old Kex pointed to the crowd. Where Xenorans and the few humans from the Earth delegation touched, small sparks of the same energy appeared. The child's power was showing them all what was possible when their species worked together. But General Krell wasn't finished. He pulled out an ancient weapon, a crystal sword that could cut through anything. If you won't step down, he growled at Zara, I'll remove you myself. The sword never reached her. John jumped in front, ready to sacrifice himself. But the baby had other plans. The moment Krell's sword came close, a bubble of pure energy surrounded John and Zara. The sword dissolved into stardust. More amazing things began to happen. Where drops of the stardust fell, tiny plants grew. Earth flowers with crystal petals. The first hybrid life forms, born from the power of their unborn child. Impossible, Krell whispered, falling to his knees. Through the palace windows, they could see the three moons of Sonora glowing brighter than ever. The light focused into beams that touched the queen's belly. Ancient prophecies, forgotten for generations, spoke of a time when the moons would bless a child of two worlds. In the crowd below, a young Sonoran girl reached out to hold hands with a human child. Where they touched, the same glow appeared. All across the city, humans and Sonorans began to connect, small sparkles of hybrid energy appearing wherever they came together. Don't you see? Queen Zara's voice rang out. This isn't about just one child. This is about all of us, what we could become together. The crystal walls of the palace, which had turned black with shame, now shimmered with every color imaginable. The ancient home of Sonoran royalty was transforming, just as their society would need to transform. But in the shadows, General Krell's eyes burned with hatred. As he slipped away from the council chamber, he pressed a hidden button on his wrist. Deep beneath the palace, ancient weapons began to wake up. If he couldn't stop this change legally, he would stop it another way. The future of two species hung in the balance, while an unborn child's power continued to show them all what was possible, if they were brave enough to accept it. Deep beneath the Crystal Palace, General Krell activated the ancient vault. Huge doors ground open for the first time in 1,000 years. Inside, row after row of crystal warriors stood frozen. The legendary army of the first queen, waiting for someone to wake them. Meanwhile, Queen Zara and John faced a different challenge. The baby's powers were growing too strong to hide. Every time Zara felt a strong emotion, strange things happened. During breakfast, her happiness made all the food float. When she got angry at a rude minister, his hair turned to crystal flowers. "Focus on my voice," John said during one particularly strong power surge. They sat in the palace garden, where hybrid crystal roses now bloomed everywhere they walked. "Feel my hand in yours." As they touched, their minds connected again. But this time, something new happened. They found themselves floating in space, surrounded by stars. In this shared vision, they could see their child's future, a teenager with blue-tinted skin and silver-flecked eyes, jumping between Earth and Sonora like stepping between rooms. Crystal cities where both species lived together, their combined knowledge creating wonders. But also darkness, forces that would try to stop this future from happening. The vision shattered as alarms blared through the palace. The ancient vault. Old Kex rushed into the garden, out of breath. "Kral has awakened the crystal warriors." The ground shook. From beneath the palace, an army of crystalline soldiers emerged, their bodies made of living crystal, their eyes glowing with ancient power. At their head, General Kral wore the crown of the first queen, an artifact that should have been destroyed centuries ago. "Destroy the human," Kral commanded. "The bloodline must remain pure." The crystal warriors advanced, but they didn't expect what happened next. The baby's power surged stronger than ever before. Queen Zara floated into the air, her skin glowing with starlight. John rose beside her, their hands clasped, their energies merging. Where the crystal warriors stepped, new life bloomed. Their ancient power, made from the same crystals as the palace, resonated with the hybrid energy of the unborn child. One by one, the warriors stopped. Their programming, designed to protect Sonoran purity, conflicted with the pure power of mixed energies they felt. "No," Kral tried to command them forward. "Obey me. I wear the crown." But the crown had changed too. The hybrid energy had awakened something old in its crystal matrix, memories of the first queen herself. Her hologram appeared, projected from the crown's crystals. "My children," the ancient hologram spoke, "I left my warriors not to preserve purity, but to protect love." Her image smiled at Zara and John. "The greatest power comes from union, not separation. That is why I married the star wanderer who crashed on our world, though he was not of our kind." Kral's face went pale. The history he had used to justify hatred was built on a lie. The Sonoran bloodline had been mixed from the very beginning. The crystal warriors knelt before Zara and John, their ancient programming reset to their true purpose, protecting love that crossed boundaries. But the revelation came with a price. The power surge had weakened Zara. The pregnancy, already unusual, was entering a critical phase. As she collapsed into John's arms, the 3 moons of Sonora pulsed with warning lights. In the palace medical bay, doctors discovered something extraordinary. The baby was creating a new kind of crystal inside Zara, a perfect fusion of organic and mineral life. But the process was straining her body's resources. "She needs a power source," the head doctor explained. "Something strong enough to support both Sonoran and human DNA as they combine." John looked at the crystal warriors, still kneeling in the garden. What about them? They'd protected hybrid love before. Maybe they can do it again. One by one, the crystal warriors offered their power. They dissolved into pure energy, flowing into Zora like starlight. Each one's sacrifice made the hybrid crystals grow stronger. General Kral watched from his cell, as his army chose love over hatred, becoming part of something greater than their original purpose. In orbit above Sonora, Earth's diplomats received strange readings. The 3 moons had shifted position, forming a triangular gateway in space. Something was coming. something that would change both worlds forever. The time of birth was approaching, and no one knew what would emerge from this impossible union. But as John held Zora's hand, watching hybrid crystals grow around them like a protective cocoon, they knew one thing: love had already won. The three moons of Sonora aligned perfectly, forming a triangle of light that pierced the clouds. Inside her crystal cocoon, Queen Zora floated in a sea of energy. The sacrificed crystal warrior's power flowed through her, keeping both her and the baby alive. But something else was happening in space. The moon triangle had become a gateway, and through it came ships, but not ordinary ships. They were living vessels, half crystal and half organic, piloted by beings that looked like a perfect blend of human and Cenoran. "Impossible," John whispered, watching from the palace observatory. They're our descendants. From the future, the lead ship landed in the palace garden. Its captain, a tall woman with crystal-flecked skin and silver-blue eyes, stepped out. "I am Admiral Jana Miller Zora," she announced. "Your great-great-granddaughter. We've come to help." The future humans Tenorans brought amazing technology. They had mastered the fusion of crystal and organic life, creating medical devices that could safely guide hybrid births. But they also brought a warning. "In our timeline," Jana explained, "the first hybrid birth created an energy wave that affected both Earth and Sonora. Without proper containment, it will cause worldwide changes, some good, some dangerous." To demonstrate, she showed them a hologram. On Earth, the energy wave had made crystals grow everywhere, creating beautiful but chaotic changes. On Sonora, it had caused humans to develop crystal-like properties, their DNA shifting too fast to control. "But we can prevent the chaos," Jana said. "Guide the change slowly, safely. That's why we're here." Inside the cocoon, Zora opened her eyes. Her skin had become translucent, showing the crystal network growing through her body. John could now share her thoughts completely, feeling everything she felt. The future ships formed a circle around the palace, creating an energy field. Inside this field, hybrid technology from the future merged with the ancient crystal of the palace. The walls became fluid, shifting like water made of light. But not everyone welcomed the future visitors. Deep in his cell, General Kral had one last trick. He had infected the palace crystals with an old virus, one designed to destroy hybrid structures. As the virus spread, parts of the palace began to crumble. The baby sensed the danger. Its power reached out, connecting with every crystal on Sonora. Through this network, both humans and Cenorans suddenly saw visions, a future where crystal cities floated among the stars, children playing in gardens where flowers grew with diamond petals, spaceships that grew like living things, diseases cured by hybrid medicine, a peaceful galaxy where differences brought strength. Jana's crew rushed to contain the virus, but it was too strong. Then John had an idea. The crown of the first queen. It still has her original hybrid energy. We can use it as an antidote. Racing against time, they brought the crown to Zora's cocoon. The moment it touched the crystal surface, pure light exploded outward. The first queen's hologram appeared again, but this time she was fully present, brought back by the power of past and future combining. "My children," she smiled at them all. Past, present, and future generations together. What was broken will be healed. What was divided will unite. The crown dissolved into pure energy, flowing through the palace crystals. Everywhere it touched, the virus died. But more than that, the crystals began to sing. A song of unity, of past and future, of two species becoming something new. In space, the three moons pulsed in rhythm with the song. On Earth, unknown to anyone yet, small crystals began to glow, preparing for the changes to come. The universe itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting. Inside her cocoon, Zora felt the baby move. The time was near. But now, they were ready. With future technology, ancient wisdom, and the combined hopes of two species, they would face whatever came next. Jana looked at her great-great-grandparents with pride. "The real story," she said, "is just about to begin." Above them all, the moon triangle glowed brighter, casting light on a world that would never be the same. The Crystal Palace floated a mile above Sonora's surface, lifted by the combined power of past, present, and future energies. Inside, Queen Zara's cocoon pulsed with blinding light. The baby was coming. Time itself seemed to bend around the palace. Through temporal windows created by the moon triangle, they could see every queen of Sonora who had ever ruled, including the first queen. On Earth, millions watched their own crystals glow in harmony with Sonora's three moons. "The dimensional barriers are thinning," Admiral Jana warned, checking her hybrid instruments. "The birth will affect multiple realities." John stood in the center of it all, his hand pressed against Zora's cocoon. Their minds were completely linked now, experiencing everything together. Through their connection, they saw impossible things. Parallel worlds where humans had crystal skin. Alternate Sonoras where crystals had become flesh. Future timelines where their child led both species to the stars. Past moments changing as hybrid energy rewrote history. The first queen's hologram danced between realities, her form shifting between human and Sonoran. "It was always meant to be this way," she said. Every queen of Sonora carried a piece of this moment in their DNA, waiting for the right time, the right union. Suddenly, the cocoon cracked. Crystal flowers bloomed from the fissures, each one containing memories of possible futures. The baby's first cry shattered every crystal in the palace, but instead of falling, the shards hung in the air, forming constellations of new star maps. The child emerged in a burst of light that temporarily blinded everyone. When they could see again, they gasped. The baby girl floated in the air, her skin shifting between human and Sonoran patterns. Her eyes opened, revealing universes within them. Where her tiny hands touched the air, reality rippled like water. But something else was happening. The sacrificed crystal warriors were reforming, changed. They were now guardians of hybrid power. Their ancient programming evolved to protect all forms of love across all realities. Through the temporal windows, they saw the changes spreading. On Earth, children born that day developed the ability to grow crystal gardens with a thought. On Sonora, the crystal caves began producing hybrid minerals that could heal any disease. In orbit, the three moons shifted, becoming dimensional anchors to stabilize the changes. Throughout the galaxy, other species felt the ripples, awakening their own hybrid potential. The baby, whom they named Aurora, for she brought new dawn to two worlds, reached out to touch her future self. Admiral Jana knelt before her infant ancestor, completing a time loop that had taken generations to form. General Krell, still in his cell, felt the changes too. The hybrid energy transformed his hatred into understanding. His crystal tears became seeds for new hybrid life forms that would help both worlds adapt. The first queen's hologram solidified one last time. She took the baby in her arms and spoke words that echoed across time. "From my love for a star wanderer, I dreamed of this day. From two forms, one heart. From two worlds, one future. From ancient crystal and living flesh. A bridge across the stars." As she spoke, the baby's power created something incredible. The space between Earth and Sonora folded, creating a permanent bridge of crystalline light. Now both worlds could remain connected, growing and evolving together. Queen Zara and John watched as their daughter brought their peoples together in ways they never imagined possible. Aurora wasn't just their child. She was the living embodiment of unity, a keeper of balance between organic and crystal, flesh and stone, past and future. The three moons of Sonora took on new colors, each one representing a different aspect of their joined destiny. The first moon glowed with the blue of Sonoran crystal. The second shone with the warmth of human flesh. The third sparkled with a hybrid rainbow of possibilities. And in the palace garden, where it all began, a new flower bloomed, a rose with petals of living crystal and a heart of pure light. It was the first of its kind, but not the last. Like the love between a human diplomat and an alien queen, it was proof that the most beautiful things in the universe come from unexpected combinations. The story of the 8-foot alien queen who laughed at the idea of breeding with a human became legend. But the real legend was just beginning, written in the stars by a child who bridged worlds.